Okay. Okay. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for attending and participating in the public forum to learn more about the final candidate for the position of Rio Salado College President. I am Wanda Tucker, Faculty Senate President. As your host for this morning, I would like to introduce Dr. Georgetta Kelly, Chief HR Human Resources Officer for Maricopa Community Colleges. She and I are co-facilitators for this session. Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank any governing board members who are attending this virtual session. At this forum, governing board members in their role as private citizens are welcome to ask the candidate questions and make comments like other attendees. However, they are not allowed under Arizona Open Meetings Law to discuss with other board members matters raised at the forum or to take any district action as governing board members. This forum, along with a college VP leadership meeting, the employee senators meetings, campus tour, sessions with the President's Council and senior staff, as well as a formal interview with Dr. Stephen R. Gonzalez, Interim Chancellor of Maricopa Community Colleges, are the final steps in the search process for this college president position. I would like to review the format and ground rules of this public forum. This forum is scheduled for 60 minutes today. The finalist will be given up to 7 minutes to introduce him or herself and explain the background that has prepared them for the role of college president. I will then ask for questions from the audience. In instances where we may receive multiple questions from one attendee, we will do our best to honor one question per attendee with the intention of rotating back to the previously unread question as time permits. We are video streaming the public forum, so the finalist is limited to a certain area of the room. You will be invited to submit questions to xsearchforum@domel.maricopa.edu. The link is available on the public forum webpage at www.maricopa.edu/RioForums. As time runs out, I will invite the finalists to take up to 5 minutes for any closing remarks. Our timekeeper for this session is sitting over there and will signal the finalists to help stay on track. The finalists will receive a 1-minute warning and then a stop sign when necessary. I request that you ask respectful questions and behave in a respectful and courteous manner at all times. For those assisting with this event, please silence your cell phones. The purpose of the public forum is to provide you with an opportunity to get to know the finalists and to solicit your input. The finalist bios and feedback form is available at www.maricopa.edu/RioForums. Please be sure to complete the online feedback form. The form is compatible for most mobile devices. The feedback information provided in the form is confidential and will be sent to the Chancellor for his review and decision-making. The links to view the forms and provide feedback will close after 5 p.m. on April 21st, 2021.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, and thank you for attending this public forum. At this time, I invite Dr. Landon Pirius to the podium.
You ready? Oh, okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to interview for Rio Salado College, and I know that it's a busy day with a number of other finalists, and I really appreciate that folks are taking the time today to ask questions and to really get to know each of the candidates. And I'm, of course, deeply appreciative that you're spending some time getting to know me as well. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Landon Pirius, and I'm the Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs in Colorado at the Community College System. I've been in Colorado for 4 years. My role is quite expansive. I've got academic affairs, student affairs, equity and inclusion, workforce development, and our centralized online entity, which serves about 13,000 online students each semester. And I get involved with policy and initiative. I work with stakeholders at a statewide level, legislators, business leaders, community organizations. Prior to coming to Colorado, I was in Minnesota for 18 years at a variety of institutions. The most recent one, which I'm going to mention because I'll likely give you examples, is North Hennepin Community College, where I was the Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs. My role there was much more local, so working with local school districts, with local workforce partners, and local universities, really trying to provide the best experiences for the students and for the community that our college served. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in higher education for 22 years, 15 of those years in community colleges. And what drives me each and every day is this belief that higher education can be transformative for students, transformative for communities. I believe higher education can provide a pathway out of poverty and a pathway to prosperity. And I believe that to be true because that was my experience. I was a low-income student. I remember what it was like living in Section 8 housing, living on food stamps, collecting cans. But higher education was one of those things that provided a pathway for me to where I'm at today. I would not be here today without higher education. And so that informs everything that I do day to day and in every role that I've had. It informs how I approach the work that I do. So first of all, I believe strongly in student success initiatives. And I've led initiatives both inside the classroom and outside of the classroom, on campus and virtually. Because I believe if we provide students with a strong student support network, they can find their pathway to prosperity. Second, I work diligently and actively with an equity-minded approach. I don't just post statements on Facebook. I don't just talk and try to lead that way. I actually do deliberative initiatives aimed at closing equity gaps and transforming lives for students who are underrepresented in higher education. Again, given the students that we serve in community colleges and that Rio Salado serves, a lot of underrepresented students, we have a fantastic opportunity to help them achieve their path to prosperity by focusing on equity. Third, I do so in partnership. I'm a strong believer that no one person, no one organization can actually do all of the things necessary to do good things. And so I believe in partnership. I partner with the Faculty Senate, with the Student Senate, with staff on campus, university partners, K-12 partners, business leaders, legislators. That has all been part of my work, and I'm a deep believer in partnership. And last, I'm a person who believes strongly in the culture of the workplace. It's critical to me that our employees feel like they belong and that they feel like they are welcome and that they are empowered to do the great work that we hired them to do. And so I've done a number of things in my leadership roles to help foster a trusting and respectful workplace that empowers individuals to do great things. And I tell you, when employees feel that way, when they feel included, they're going to take that extra step and go that extra mile to help students. And ultimately, all of us together will help students find their pathway to prosperity. So all of these things, I'm hoping throughout this open forum, I have the opportunity to give you actual examples and not just philosophical statements. But I have countless examples for each one of those things, and that's what I would bring to Rio Salado College, and I'm excited to hear what questions come today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Perius. At this time, we invite questions from audience members. You may now submit questions to X Search Forum at domel.maricopa.edu. We will do our best to rotate through all questions, honoring at least one question posed from each attendee as time permits. In instances where we may receive multiple questions from one attendee, we will make every effort to return to any unasked questions once we have given equal time to other attendees also asking a question. We can get started now.
Yes, I'll be reading the questions today.
Great.
According to the report released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics in February, people with disabilities have lower educational attainment and higher unemployment than their non-disabled peers. The report also found that the higher their educational attainment, the more likely people with disabilities were to be employed. How can Rio help people with disabilities reach their educational goals and increase their likelihood of obtaining gainful employment?
Excellent, thank you. Let me perhaps share a little bit of work that I've done in this space so you can understand perhaps what I might bring to Rio Salado as it relates to this question. First of all, let me point out that I myself have had a learning disability when I was young. So I had a speech impediment. You might not be able to catch that, but I can tell you there are certain words and letters that I cannot start sentences with still to this day. And so I had counseling and I've had training and I've tried to get past that, but that still lives with me. And I've had other members of my family who have had other types of disabilities that have helped and hindered them. And so my approach in higher education has been, how do we help all students have that opportunity for success? And in the area of disabilities, back at North Hennepin Community College, I oversaw the Access Services Office, which focused on providing accommodations for students, working hand in hand with our Director of Access Services to help smooth transitions for students coming out of high schools with IEPs, and developing plans, working with faculty, working with student support staff to ultimately make sure that those students receive the support they needed to be able to be successful at the institution. I've also been in online education my entire career. I started at Walden University. In each of the institutions that I've worked at since, I've been involved with online education. And so I'm deeply passionate about WCAG standards and ensuring that we design our course experience and experiences in order to be accessible for people with disabilities, but also for everyone else. A lot of the standards that are in place are universal standards that actually help all students. And so I've worked throughout my career both at North Hennepin and at the community college system in Colorado, trying to champion accessibility so that all students can access our education and ultimately be successful when they come to us. And so I would bring that spirit from both personal experience as well as professional experience to this role. I'd first want to learn kind of the landscape and what's being done currently and try to understand what's working and what isn't working. And once I have a better sense of that, then partner with the right people to ensure that we are advocating and supporting students in their pathway.
Thank you. Our next question, MCCCD has said it supports sustainability. How would you implement remote work or hybrid workspace as a method to reduce the Rio Salado College carbon footprint?
Well, it's a very relevant question. It's actually one we're entertaining right now in the community college system in Colorado, is is what does the remote work environment look like post-pandemic, whatever that looks like. And so prior to the pandemic, I can tell you that if you were you worked in the online unit, you worked remotely, but if you worked in a physical location, you did not. And maybe you had the opportunity to have a day here or there, but for the most part, most people did not. But what we've realized is that the technology is there, and it is usable for folks who work in non-online environments as well. Zoom meetings, Zoom counseling appointments, classes. These are all things that Rio Salado likely knows well already, so I'm not saying anything new to you all. But for folks who have a physical presence in a space, there is a real opportunity to help to actually move to a more remote environment. And sustainability is one of those drives, but also employee satisfaction, productivity, and frankly, competitiveness. I know in Colorado, one of the things we struggle with is that our wages do not meet or they don't keep up, I should say, with the pace of inflation and costs of living in Colorado, specifically Denver. And so we are increasingly having issues trying to attract employees, good talent to our community college system. So we actually see this remote environment as potentially one way to attract and retain good talent where we can't necessarily keep up with the constantly rising cost of living. And so sustainability is really important, but so is other aspects that I think remote learning and work could actually help us achieve as a system and as a college.
Thank you. Explain your philosophy on quality assurance and continuous improvement and the role it has within a college.
I'll take that drink in a second. So if we go back to what I said was really important to me, what drove me, is all of those factors that I think ultimately help students be successful and find their pathway to prosperity. What that means to me on a day-to-day basis is a constant internal reflection, but also an institutional reflection on what are we doing that helps or hinders student success. And I believe that policies, structures, mindsets, and other sorts of institutional barriers often hinder student success. I think about, if I go back to how do we serve underrepresented students and how do we serve them well to ensure they are successful, I'm so happy every time I meet and talk to students who have found their pathway to prosperity. It's an excellent story, but I'm disheartened when I look at the data and I can see just how many other students did not. 50% in some cases of students who start at community colleges don't finish community colleges in some of our institutions in Colorado, and that's not okay. We have students who start the semester well-intended to accumulate credits and find their pathway, only to drop out mid-semester, and now they've left our institution in worse shape than when they came because now they have financial debt. So I constantly think internally, and I have conversations with folks at our colleges and at our system office about what are we doing that actually is helping, and let's double down on that. What are those advising services? What are we doing in the classroom that's really making a difference? And let's double down on that. But what are those things that aren't working? And you can't find that out unless you talk to students and unless you look at your data. And if you don't look at your data and you don't talk to students, you're not going to know what's working or what isn't. So my philosophy around continuous improvement is to be very data-informed, equity-minded, so disaggregating data and trying to really understand success by student demographic, and then working hand in hand in partnership with folks in the community and folks on campus with really trying to make transformational change that promotes, that helps student success rather than hinders student success. So that's my approach.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next question is on fairness. Being at the top of an organization more often than not, you are presented with the situation by one person or a very small group of people who often presents only one side of the situation. What decision-making process do you use to analyze how many parties are involved and to make sure the situation is solved with fairness, impartial and just, without favoritism to all parties involved?
Sure. It's an excellent question, and it's one that I think is imperative to that fourth pillar that I talked about in ensuring that we have a welcoming and inclusive and belonging in our workforce environment. I would say what I'm going to talk about will be employee related, but know that I've also done this work in the student realm because I've been a dean of students. I've dealt with student conduct. I've approached student conduct from a restorative point of view, a restorative justice point of view. And when I'm working with employees, I think of it similarly. So back in Minnesota, I was, again, the vice president for academic and student affairs. It was a union environment. So we had a faculty union and 3 staff unions. And it was spelled out in the contracts how you handled employee issues. And so you're absolutely right in your question that the higher you get, the more likely you're going to end up working through these difficult situations. My approach is to find the facts from multiple points of view before any sort of decision is made. So if I'm thinking about an employee dispute between 2 employees, oftentimes it's one employee who brings it to you first. And I'm going to hear them out. And one of the things you'll learn from me is that I'm a listener. I listen first, speak second, even though in this format I'm speaking first. And I really, when I'm talking to that person in the room, they're the most important person at that moment in time. And I'm hearing what they have to say to me. But I don't make a judgment or start to form opinions until I have the opportunity to talk to others. That could be the other person in this case. It could be a group of people, depending on what it is. But I do spend time, even though it takes time, and I'll be a busy person. We're all busy people. But in order to create an environment where people feel that they're heard, that they feel like leadership listens to them, and that an environment that's trusting, you have to take that time, and I take that time. And so at the end of the day, there's not a decision that everyone's going to love, typically. That's just the reality. But what I do is I then spend the time sharing with both parties why a decision was made. So it's not just here it is, go do your job. It's let's talk about why I made this decision and how we're going to move forward together. So it's a relationship focused approach. It's a trust and respect approach. But it's one that I've found that if you can spend the time with individuals, that oftentimes disarms and helps the situation move forward because they feel heard, they feel like you care. And that is a piece that I bring to leadership, and that's the approach I would take in an employee conflict or dispute or situation.
Thank you. If selected to be the next Rio Salado College president, how do you plan to position Rio Salado favorably in higher education, considering that all schools now have courses in the online format? How will you lead Rio Salado College to have us stand out again?
Sure. Well, as I've mentioned, I've been in higher education for 22 years, and in that entire time, I've been in online education in some shape or form. And because of that, I've been well aware of Rio Salado. And one of the reasons I'm even here today and even applied for this job is because I'm well aware of Rio Salado's history and its reputation. And what sticks out to me is, with Rio Salado, one of the things that's really compelling to me is the focus on innovative support of underrepresented students. And so it may have started as primarily online in a space and a time when online and remote learning were not all over the place. But time has moved on, and what I've seen is that Rio has adapted as well. So you still have a strong online presence, but you also work with incarcerated students, military students, veterans, adult students at all spectrums, adult basic ed and also adult students who are mid-career trying to change their trajectory, concurrent enrollment students. It feels to me like Rio Salado is always thinking about what other group of underrepresented students can we support as an institution. And if that's the spirit and the culture of this institution, that's how I would want to continue to lead. Where are students currently underserved? Where can we help provide and fill in a gap where other institutions don't want to do it or aren't doing it well? And that, again, is one of the things about Rio Salado. It's serving students that other institutions historically haven't wanted to serve. And so if we talk collectively about where are those pockets of students, we will find our opportunities, and that will then drive where else we could innovate in terms of programming, in terms of service. I'll tell you one of the areas that I'm really proud of. I don't know the culture well enough in Arizona to say if it would work here. But I can tell you at both institutions I was at, back in Minnesota, one of the things I was most excited about was the creation of our university center. As workforce credential requirements continue to grow, and as the need for continuing education beyond certificates and associate's degrees continues to grow, there is a need for students to have seamless pathways to bachelor's degrees. In Minnesota, we did not have the authority to offer bachelor's degrees at the community college, and so we brought the university to us. We brought 6 universities to our campus, 12 bachelor's programs. Our college was in a university desert, so there were no universities that students could go to. And they felt safe, they felt welcomed, and they loved our college. They didn't want to leave. And so instead what we did was bring those universities to that campus. In Colorado, I've been on the forefront of actually getting legislation to allow community colleges to offer bachelor's degrees. The most recent was we now have the authority to offer bachelor's of science degrees in nursing. Because of the nursing shortage in Colorado, and the lack of capacity at the universities, and because we have rural community colleges, the lack of access to quality bachelor's degrees in rural communities. So I'm not saying that would necessarily be a path for Arizona. I don't know the politics, I don't know the landscape as well, but I can tell you that's an area where we innovated because we knew students were underserved at community colleges and bachelor's degree attainment. And so in both cases, 2 different approaches, I led the work to bring those bachelor's degrees to our students. So if that's an area that makes sense for Rio Salado College, I have a lot of experience in that area.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rio Salado is home to the largest and top performing adult education program in the state of Arizona. It is also the designated adult education provider for the district and an integral part of the local workforce system. What is your vision for investing in this program to ensure a population that has been hard hit by the pandemic to ensure a population that has been hard hit by the pandemic can continue to access education workforce services that are critical entry point into job training and employment?
I got it.
Okay, good.
Yes. Excellent question. One of the things that we have seen in the pandemic is that historically underrepresented students they're losing any position that they may have had, either to be able to come to higher education or to stay in higher education if they're in higher education. Adult basic education I'll tell you, in Colorado, is abysmally funded. Just being honest, there's very little money in this space. And as a result, there's numerous stories and there's a lot of data around how that pathway to higher education is almost non-existent. It's there, it's just not very strong. In Minnesota, it was different. It was funded different, it was funded better. It was funded through the workforce centers, so a little bit different, not through higher education. But my approach in Minnesota was to work hand in hand with the local workforce development centers, not only to have access for students who wanted higher education, but to bring it to our campus. So we actually brought an adult basic ed program through the Workforce Development Center onto our campus to provide that seamless transition for students into higher education. So I have experience more so in Minnesota than in Colorado with adult basic education, but it's an area that I'm passionate about because I have a number of individuals in my own family who have accessed, who have completed their GEDs, or have ultimately used that as a pathway to move on to higher education. So it's personal for me, but I've also worked with so many students, both mostly in Minnesota, but also in Colorado, who also have made that pathway, that transition. So I would want to make sure to strengthen it. And the way that I would do that is by bringing in the right partners into the room. I don't know if it's from what I can see on the web and what I can see in talking with individuals, it's a very robust program that Rio Salado has. And it's distributed around the district. But in order to expand that, to sustain that, I would want to make sure that we bring the right partners into the room, whether that's the district, other colleges, K-12 partners, workforce partners, in order to sustain funding and to sustain those pathways, because without those pathways, I've seen it again in Colorado, a number of students just cannot get to higher education into college level coursework. And so I would want to make sure that through partnership, we build and strengthen and sustain those pathways for students.
Thank you.
Yep.
Our next question. Rio Salado often follows policies and procedures set forth by the district office, coming from collaborative teams represented by stakeholders from all 10 Maricopa community colleges. How would you support a systemic Maricopa-wide initiative so that we can move forward as an entire district while continuing to support your college campus autonomy?
Yeah. It's a great question. I'm a product of two systems. So I was in Minnesota, I was at colleges and universities, so I was at the local level, but part of the Minnesota system, and in Colorado, I'm at the system office. And so now we serve the entire state, not just a district. And so, but I can tell you in 4 years at the system office, I have gained an appreciation for having a collaboration or a system or a district of colleges. There's strength in being together. However, that does not mean that everyone has to do everything the same. And so, and when I was in Minnesota, I oftentimes looked at the system office as kind of that place that just made decisions and didn't take into consideration the nuances of the colleges. But here in Colorado, my approach at the system office is I see my role as a servant to the colleges. What I do is to help serve the colleges so they can serve students and serve the community. But we do that together. So we have 13 colleges, we have 40 campuses across the state of Colorado. I work hand in hand with each of those 13 college presidents, the Vice President's Council, the Statewide Faculty Association, the Statewide Student Association, countless community and business partners to ensure that students across the state of Colorado have equitable access to higher education and support services. And I can tell you in the pandemic, our rural colleges in the corners of Colorado were hit hard. They're residential colleges. They rely on a lot of auxiliary dollars, resident life, athletics, other sorts of things. And when those courses went online and remote, the campus is vacated and many students left. If those rural community colleges were not part of a system, I'm not sure how long they could have could have sustained themselves. They wouldn't have closed immediately, but they definitely would have been in a financial situation. We were able to, at the system, shift resources, shift technology help, provide professional development in ways that no individual college could do on their own. And as a system, we were able to actually ensure that we supported all 13 colleges, all 40 locations, and students wherever they were in Colorado. So I believe in the district example here for Maricopa, it would be similar, that as a group of colleges, we are stronger together. Being very mindful, though, of how each college in the district has its own culture and personality and focus and strength. I am not a believer in everyone do everything exactly the same, but I am a believer in the strength of a system in order to support all colleges to be successful. So given my experience and my background, I would bring that. I would definitely be a team player at the district office, but that would not mean that I would somehow not advocate for Rio Salado College. I would be a passionate supporter for our students, our community, our partners, but at the same time be a good player with the district office, because I think we're all stronger together.
Thank you. I think you've touched upon this question before, but I'm going to just make sure that we try and reach out to as many requesters as possible. From your perspective, what makes Rio Salado unique among online education providers? And with increasing competition, what will you do to keep Rio at the forefront of online education?
Yeah, thank you. I did talk a little bit about that, but let me add a few things. As I've mentioned, Rio Salado, at least from what I can see external, has always been an innovative institution focused on serving underrepresented students. And that has made Rio Salado unique. All community colleges serve underrepresented students, but not in the way that Rio Salado has done so. And what I really appreciate about what I can see is an institution focused on flexibility, accessibility, universal design, and meeting students where they're at, and understanding that every student might need a little bit different support, and therefore we're providing equitable services, not just equal services. That to me has helped Rio Salado stand out. And that is how I'd want to continue making sure Rio Salado stands out. In the growing landscape of online education, it seems like everyone is bringing on an online program. And there's going to be even more post-pandemic, because people will be like, hey, we did this, we can do that. In fact, in Colorado, like I mentioned, we have a centralized online unit. And that centralized online unit, I'm leading the effort to transform what that looks like. And then, we're looking at what Rio Salado has been doing and what we could potentially do to emulate, but also what we could do to perhaps have us stand out differently, so that we can continue to serve. One of the things that I think is really powerful about community colleges and online is there is a local presence. And looking at the map of where Rio Salado is located, it's all over the district. And different from some of the big name online universities who are really good in the online space, they don't necessarily have a local presence. And I think that a community college that can have a local presence, in addition to the online strength, provides something different and unique for students. The student may want to be in a fully online program. They may want fully online services. But at the end of the day, there might be a moment in time where they want to come in and meet with someone in a physical location. And so the fact that Rio Salado is located across the district in a number of locations, I think really makes it a competitive advantage for the institution versus a lot of institutions that are just online. And so that's an approach. That's actually something we're trying to emulate in Colorado with our 40 campus locations, is how can we leverage 40 locations coupled with our online presence, because we still believe people want to have a physical location or proximity to where they're at. And so that's a real strength and something I'd want to capitalize on. I'd be very interested to hear if there's time somewhere in these 2 days to talk a little bit more about Rio National, to understand how that is different from the way that Rio has been. Because I don't have a good grasp of that. So I'd really love to hear more about that and how it might intersect or relate to what I just said about having local presence. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are your strongest characteristics as a leader and areas you are improving upon?
Yeah, the dreaded weakness question. I'll start with some of the traits that I think I bring as a leader. And what you might sense, I mean, I am speaking to, I don't know how many people are on this call, but, or on this open forum. I can articulate. I can get up in front of folks, I can talk to folks, but I have a much more subdued personality. You might be able to catch that. I'm not gregarious, I'm not bombastic, I'm not an entertainer. But what I bring is substance, and I bring a genuine personality, an authentic personality, one who really deeply cares about people at the human level. I spend a lot of time in relationship building, sharing personal stories about myself, getting to know personal stories about other people. That's folks on campus and off campus in the community. I'm really collaborative, really team focused, and really transparent. Earlier I talked about how it's important to share your why. So I shared why higher education is such a high value for me. I share in employee conflict why I'm making a decision some way. So again, very transparent. And I may have said this already, listen first and speak second. That's the type of personality that I have. If you're looking for a person who is gregarious and bombastic, I'm not that person. But I'm a person who instills confidence through competence. And I do a lot of work with people collaboratively. And I also want to say that I also am still very passionate and energetic. We're going to do a lot of things together if I'm the person here. I just have a different approach. I forgot the second part of that question. I'm sorry. Leadership. Oh, weaknesses. Yes, I did not forget that. So there's a couple of things in terms of weaknesses or areas that I could improve. So the first is that I have this sense of urgency about myself. And about the work that we do. And the reason I have that is because there are so many students and so many community members who do not have access to higher education and cannot find that pathway out of prosperity. And I look at our landscape in higher education, I look at our landscape internal to the organization, and I see barriers. And I see opportunity. And so part of what I do struggle with is that I want to do a lot of things at once. And so I have to oftentimes take a step back and be reflective about what can we realistically do at this time, given resources, given the political landscape, or whatever the various barriers might be, and try to check that internal desire to do a lot of things. One thing I have done to actually counteract that is I've stopped doing things. It's something in higher education we don't do a lot. We continue to add, but how often do we take a step back and say, you know what, this isn't working, or this isn't who we are, we need to stop doing something. And that's something that it's difficult to do. It's difficult to let go, but it's part of how I've countered this desire to just do a lot, is if I can get people to say, okay, we're gonna stop doing this in order to do this. That's one approach that I think can help counteract. So that sense of urgency. And then the other piece is, I've alluded to this, I'm a relationship person. If we're talking in a room and it's you and I give you the time you need to share your story. And unfortunately, while that's really good in terms of relationship building, that is not good in terms of time management. So I have to work really hard with setting boundaries and making sure that while I want to give everyone the time they need, I also have to be respectful of the next person who's supposed to come in the room next. So those are a couple of areas of growth, and if my executive assistant was here now, she could tell you all about how bad that can get. So those are a couple areas I'm very mindful that I need to improve.
Well, Dr. Pirius, we have reached the end of the question period. And so at this point, we'd like to thank you for your time today. If you would like to leave us with any closing remarks, you are welcome to take up to 5 minutes to do so.
Okay, thank you. And again, thanks everyone. I really wish that I have a few audience members here, but I wish that everyone else could be here as well. And I want you to know this. I'm genuinely excited about this opportunity. I am not a person who is seeking a title. I am not a person who's just moving from one place to the next. I'm genuinely interested in Rio Salado for a lot of the reasons that I've articulated. This is the only search that I'm in, and I'm very selective in what I apply for. I love my job in Colorado. It's a great system. I have a great boss. But I'm also looking for that opportunity to come back to a college as opposed to the system and work closely with faculty, staff, and the community folks in order to do great things together. And so I'm really hopeful. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited for the rest of the today and tomorrow to hopefully get to know a little bit more about everyone and for you to get to know about me. I'm a person who believes in fit and shared values. If we do not have the same shared values, we can't do great things together. And so I'm hoping that through the next 2 days we will mutually agree that we have a number of shared values that we could use to build a great relationship in the future. So thank you for the opportunity today. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pirius. This now concludes this public forum, and we invite you to take time to complete your feedback form located at www.maricopa.edu/Rio-forums. All feedback is due by Wednesday, April 21st at 5 p.m. Again, thank you so much for joining us today.